The allegations Meghan has made are simply not true. Her account does not reflect what actually happened, and it has led the public to a deeply misleading impression. That version of events has no basis in.
Prince William had entered the private palace briefing expecting another security update. He left it unable to stand. What the guards placed before him was not a rumor, an anonymous warning, or a distant suspicion. It was recorded footage from inside a restricted royal corridor, showing Prince Harry approaching a sealed vault that almost nobody outside the senior household knew existed. Then came the second clip. Harry entered, and William's entire expression changed. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. William stared at the screen as palace security replayed the recording. The secret royal vault, a sealed family archive protecting private correspondence and personal effects outside public collections, was accessible to only a tiny circle. That was why Harry, crossing its threshold, struck so hard. The prince reached for the table, his face draining of color, before collapsing into a chair. William asked for the footage again. Harry appeared in the corridor, moving toward the secured entrance after hours. The future king leaned in, willing the image to change. It did not. His brother was unmistakable. He pressed one hand against the table and whispered, "Play it through." Charles arrived minutes later and understood this was more than a security breach. The king watched his eldest son before looking at the monitor. William believed that damage their relationship became, certain family boundaries would remain untouched. Now Harry had crossed one of the most protected. Charles moved toward him, but the prince raised a hand, refusing reassurance. Then a guard delivered the detail that changed everything. Harry had not forced the vault. The electronic access record showed a normal authorized opening, meaning someone with legitimate palace clearance had apparently enabled his entry. William looked up sharply. If Harry had help, the betrayal could reach far beyond the two brothers. William asked one question. How long was he inside? The answer landed brutally. Nearly 40 minutes. Worse, the archive camera had been inactive for that period. The prince removed his glasses, placed them beside the monitor, and pushed his chair back as though the room had become too small. Charles ordered the security file sealed, meaning access to the investigation would be restricted to palace officials. Before anyone moved, another officer broke the silence. Harry had not been the first person asking about the vault. Weeks earlier, someone inside the family had begun probing its contents. The footage explained what Harry had done, but understanding why William reacted, as though something far more personal had been violated, required looking at the two brothers standing on opposite sides of the palace divide. The greatest shock was not that palace security had failed. It was that William recognized the man on the screen instantly, not as a distant royal exile, but as the younger brother who once shared almost every defining moment of his life. Years of bitterness had already separated them. Yet there were still invisible lines William believed blood alone protected. The secret vault was one of them. Harry's entrance shattered that final assumption. William had spent years learning how to separate family pain from royal duty. As the future king, meaning the heir expected to carry the crown into its next generation, he understood that private disputes could quickly become institutional crises. That was why this cut so deeply. Harry had not simply crossed into a restricted room. He had bypassed his brother, ignored the structure protecting the monarchy, and entered a place William believed even their worst disagreements would never touch. Harry stood on the opposite side of that divide. Removed from the daily machinery of palace life, he still carried memories, grievances, and questions that had never disappeared. That made his presence inside the corridor more explosive. William could have understood anger. He might even have understood a demand. What he could not understand was secrecy. If Harry had asked, there would at least have been words between them. Instead, there was footage. Charles waited until the aides had left before closing the briefing room door. The king, the reigning monarch responsible for both the family and the institution, quietly said Harry's name. William remained near the window, shoulders tight. "Don't ask me to make this smaller than it is," the prince said. Charles answered that Harry was still his son. William turned immediately. That, he said, was exactly the problem. Too many consequences had been delayed because blood kept interfering with judgment. Then the security file delivered another blow. Harry had arrived without a visible escort, Yet one internal door opened 30 seconds before he reached it. Someone had expected him. Someone had prepared the route. William read the timing twice, then asked who inside the palace still possessed that level of access. The date made the suspicion worse. The entry had taken place during the anniversary week of a deeply personal family loss, and William's thoughts shifted immediately toward Diana. He no longer believed Harry had gone into the vault searching for jewels, money, or symbols of status. He believed his brother had been looking for something connected to their mother. William ordered a complete inventory. Hours later, an archivist returned with the first result. One sealed collection linked to Diana had been disturbed. And once her name entered the investigation, the crisis stopped being merely about unauthorized access, because behind that vault door was the family wound neither brother had ever truly escaped. Weeks before Harry ever appeared on the security recording, there had been another moment inside the palace, quiet, private, almost forgettable to everyone except the two men involved. Harry had asked William one direct question about documents left after Diana's death. William refused to discuss them. No shouting followed. No threat was made. But Harry's final sentence changed the atmosphere completely. If the palace would not tell him what existed, he would find out another way. Harry had come to that meeting carrying one question and years of frustration behind it. The restricted archive, a protected collection holding private family correspondence and sensitive material kept outside public royal records, contained items never meant for casual access. William knew some of those papers touched the most painful parts of their family history, and he believed grief did not give either brother the right to turn private material into weapons. William listened as Harry asked whether Diana had left a sealed packet addressed jointly to her sons. The prince did not deny that such records might exist. Instead, he said nothing could be discussed until a custodial review, the formal process used to confirm who legally controls and may access protected material, had been completed. Harry's face changed immediately. "Then you've already chosen who gets to know," he said. Harry stood to leave. William remained seated, anger held tightly behind restraint. "This doesn't have to become another war," the future king told him. His brother paused at the door and answered that, from where he stood, the war had started years ago. Then he walked out, leaving William with the accusation he hated most, that duty had become an excuse for shutting family out. Charles learned about the exchange later through a private conversation with William. The king urged his eldest son not to let another disagreement harden into permanent estrangement. William refused to bend. If archive rules could be ignored whenever emotions ran high, then the protections meant nothing. Charles understood the argument, but he also understood Harry. That made the silence between them more dangerous. 2 days later, something strange happened. A palace employee received an internal request asking which historic storage rooms still used legacy access permissions, meaning older security credentials that had not yet been fully replaced. The request looked routine and was ignored. Investigators later found something worse. Someone had opened an old architectural plan showing a hidden service passage leading toward the vault corridor. The digital account belonged to an employee who insisted they had never accessed the file. William finally understood the scale of it. Harry could not have found that route alone. That closing door between the brothers would soon be replaced by one made of reinforced steel, and when William finally confronted Harry about crossing it, neither man would have anywhere left to hide. By the time Charles received the complete security report, the crisis had moved beyond two wounded brothers. A protected royal archive had been entered, internal credentials had been manipulated, and a mysterious item connected to Diana could no longer be located. The king now faced an impossible choice. Treat Harry as a son acting from grief, or treat the breach as he would any threat to the integrity of the crown. This time, Charles chose procedure. Charles ordered all non-essential access to the archive suspended immediately. He also demanded an audit of legacy credentials, meaning older security permissions that should have been removed or replaced, and a review of everyone who had entered restricted areas during the previous month. The king understood why this mattered. If one forgotten credential could open a protected corridor, then the problem was no longer just Harry. It was the palace system itself. William reacted badly when he was told to step away from direct control of the security inquiry. The prince believed he had already been kept outside too many painful decisions. and now his own emotional involvement was being used as a reason to remove him. Charles refused to soften the message. His son was too close to the breach, too angry, and too personally wounded to judge every piece of evidence without bias. Charles struggled with another truth at the same time. Formal action against Harry would deepen a family rupture that already felt permanent. Yet the monarch also knew that protecting his younger son could not mean weakening the standards expected from everyone else. When William accused him of managing the truth again, the king answered firmly, "Protecting him does not mean hiding anything from you." Then investigators isolated the credential used to open the secondary corridor. It belonged to a retired household official whose access should have been disabled months earlier. The discovery was alarming enough. What came next was worse. In a documented interview, the former courtier admitted meeting Harry privately before the breach, but denied giving him any security code. The retired official revealed something far more disturbing during that same recorded account. Someone had copied an old access token during a palace inventory and deliberately left it active. That meant the door may have been prepared long before Harry arrived. Charles read the statement alone. He reached one paragraph, stopped, then read it again. The king removed his glasses, folded the pages, and called William back. William entered expecting another argument. Charles kept the file in his hand. "You need to understand this before you blame him for all of it," the monarch said. The prince's anger disappeared into confusion. Harry had breached the vault, but evidence now suggested someone else reached Diana's sealed material first, and that distinction was about to tear the investigation wide open. For hours, the palace had treated Harry as the center of the breach. Then, one timestamp destroyed that certainty. The archival seal on Diana's collection had already been broken 11 days before Harry entered the restricted corridor. Suddenly, the man captured on surveillance was no longer the beginning of the mystery. William was forced to confront an even darker possibility. His brother had done something reckless, but perhaps he had walked into a secret already unfolding. William studied the revised evidence in silence. Archive specialists had found tiny damage around the wax and paper seal, enough to show the collection had been opened earlier. The inspection log, a handwritten record used to confirm when protected material was checked and secured, showed the box had been intact during the previous quarterly review. That meant the breach involving Diana's papers had started before Harry ever appeared on camera. Charles immediately ordered investigators to separate the case into two events. The king now had to distinguish between the earlier removal of the missing envelope and Harry's later unauthorized entry. That changed everything. William felt a rush of shame because his first instinct had been to believe his brother had taken something connected to their mother. Yet the prince could not simply excuse him. Harry had still entered a forbidden archive, knowing he had no authority to be there. Harry reacted with fury when Charles told him during a private recorded conversation that investigators had initially believed he removed the item. He accused the palace of choosing its explanation before checking the timeline. The king let him finish, then answered that the evidence had changed and so would the investigation. Harry was not satisfied, but for the first time, he heard the monarch admit the original assumption had been wrong. Then another discovery deepened the mystery. A partial corridor log showed someone had entered the secure wing 11 days earlier using a maintenance override, a temporary access method normally reserved for repairs and emergency work. The camera feed covering that corridor vanished for exactly 14 minutes. An archive assistant later gave a documented account describing a senior household figure leaving the lower level carrying a plain leather folio. William sat alone with the updated timeline and circled the earlier date with his pen. Beneath Harry's name, he wrote two words: "Not first." Catherine watched him close the investigation binder and move away in silence. She finally asked whether the evidence cleared his brother. William shook his head. "No, but it changes what I thought I was looking at." Then Harry sent word through a private message. He would finally identify the person who told him about the vault, but only if William met him alone. For William, that distinction was painful but necessary. And when he agreed, the crisis stopped being an investigation and became a conversation between brothers again. The meeting took place without staff, security officers, lawyers, or even Charles. For the first time since the footage emerged, William and Harry were alone, with no institution between them. There was no shouting now. The anger had burned itself into exhaustion. Harry gave his brother the name he had withheld, explained why he entered the vault, and then admitted something William never expected. He had been trying to prove the palace was deceiving them both, not simply prove William wrong. Harry explained that a former household archivist had contacted him after finding differences between old inventory records and the current restricted catalog. The catalog, a formal list showing which protected royal materials were stored and where, no longer matched earlier records connected to Diana. His source believed a sealed envelope had been moved without either son being told. For Harry, that possibility felt like one more decision about their mother being made behind closed doors. William listened, but he did not excuse what happened. The prince told his brother plainly that suspicion did not justify entering a protected chamber. Harry did not fight him on that point. He admitted that grief, anger, and years of distrust had pushed him into a decision he now understood could have endangered staff and compromised security. William heard the admission, but the hurt remained. Harry then answered with something quieter. He told William that his instinct to defend procedure had made it impossible to believe he would ever truly listen. The future king resisted at first, then admitted that duty had sometimes become a shield. Fighting with his brother had become so painful that rules were easier than conversations. Neither man looked comfortable with the truth. Then Harry revealed what he had done inside the vault through photographs stored on his phone. He had captured images of the archive index before leaving. One entry showed Diana's missing envelope had once been marked for transfer under a sovereign-level authorization code, meaning approval reserved for the reigning monarch or someone acting under that authority. The code dated from before Charles became king. William understood the significance immediately. The transfer had apparently begun under arrangements originating during Elizabeth II's reign. That meant the envelope might not have been stolen at all. It could have been moved during a confidential transfer and then recorded incorrectly. Harry sent every photograph to his brother. No conditions, no bargaining. William watched the files arrive, then looked across at him. "You should have called me," William said. Harry placed his phone face down. "You should have answered me before I stopped believing you would." Neither apologized, neither left. The recovered index finally gave Charles something investigators had lacked: a traceable transfer reference leading toward an uncatalogued archival box. That fragile honesty achieved what days of security interviews could not. Somewhere inside the palace system, Diana's missing material finally had a trail. By morning, secrecy was impossible. The image of Harry entering a restricted royal corridor had escaped the walls that were supposed to contain it, and the reaction was instant. Yet the public story quickly became more complicated than the first explosive headline. Harry had entered the vault. William had suffered an emotional collapse during the security briefing. But evidence now suggested the missing Diana material had vanished earlier, and Britain watched the brothers' private trauma become public spectacle. William hated how quickly the most personal moment of the crisis had become public property. Palace Communications issued a tightly controlled statement confirming a security review of restricted archival access, meaning protected royal records available only to authorized staff, while refusing to describe what the vault contained. That silence only fueled the frenzy. Commentators split between condemning Harry's decision to enter and questioning how obsolete credentials and missing camera footage could exist inside a royal residence. William watched the coverage without sound. When a presenter mentioned his collapse, the prince switched the television off. Catherine remained beside him, knowing exactly why the report had cut so deeply. To William, that moment had been shock, grief, and betrayal colliding at once. He did not want it turned into a public test of whether a future king could withstand pressure. "They know the worst moment," he said quietly. "They still don't know the truth." Harry felt trapped by the same spectacle for a different reason. He knew denying his entry would only deepen suspicion, so he refused to challenge that part of the story. Yet the Duke also saw every headline as proof that even the most private family wound could become entertainment once it escaped palace walls. His silence was not surrender. It was an attempt to stop the crisis growing even uglier. Outside Buckingham Palace, the public reaction became impossible to ignore. A small evening crowd gathered as newspapers arrived, carrying the same grainy image of Harry in the corridor beneath one enormous headline, "Behind the Royal Door." The image reduced days of confusion into one accusation. Then the story shifted again. During a live evening broadcast, Correspondence disclosed that the archive seal had been broken before Harry's recorded entry. Network suddenly had to revise the idea that he had simply entered and taken Diana's material. Charles received the next development minutes later. Palace archivists had located an overlooked transfer manifest, a formal record showing when protected material was moved between secure locations. Diana's envelope had been listed years earlier for transfer into a second repository. The king acted immediately. He ordered the sealed transfer box brought directly to him and summoned William and Harry. The world had already chosen its headlines, but inside the palace, one final box was about to decide whether this crisis ended in accusation or understanding. The final answer was almost painfully simple. Diana's missing envelope had not been stolen by Harry. It had not been secretly destroyed by William. Years earlier, it had been moved under an authorized archival transfer and then incorrectly recorded when the royal collection system was reorganized. The breach remained real. Harry had crossed a line he should never have crossed. But the darkest suspicion that one brother had taken something sacred from the other collapsed the moment Charles opened the recovered box and placed the sealed envelope before them. Charles checked the identifying code against the transfer records and confirmed the match. The archival transfer, meaning the formal movement of protected royal material from one secure repository to another, had been authorized years earlier. The envelope had remained sealed throughout the entire dispute. Harry had not taken it. William had not hidden it. The mystery that had driven the brothers apart had been created by a broken record, a security failure, and years of mistrust waiting for the worst possible spark. Harry did not use the discovery to excuse himself. He admitted directly to William that entering the vault without permission had been wrong. The younger brother accepted that fear of being excluded had pushed him into an indefensible decision. William listened and admitted something of his own. Seeing Harry on the footage had made him assume the worst before understanding the full timeline. The prince knew his collapse had come from years of accumulated grief and distrust, finally breaking through at once. Charles refused to let either son hide behind emotion. The king made his position clear. Harry would face consequences for entering the archive, but he would not carry blame for an envelope he never removed. William would not be condemned for reacting as a wounded brother, but he would have to accept how quickly suspicion had hardened into certainty. Palace security closed the access loophole, revoked dormant credentials, and introduced dual authorization, requiring 2 approved people before anyone could enter the restricted archive. Then the room became quiet. Charles placed Diana's sealed envelope between the brothers, but did not open it. He told them that whatever their mother intended them to know should be approached together. William reached toward it, then stopped. Instead of pulling it toward himself, he slid it halfway across the table. Harry placed his hand on the opposite edge. Neither man pulled away. The crisis did not restore everything they had lost. Trust was not magically repaired, and the breach was not forgotten. But something changed. William left more guarded, yet less willing to confuse suspicion with proof. Harry left chastened, but finally heard. Charles left having defended both the boundaries of the crown and the truth. The secret vault had exposed every fracture the palace wanted hidden, but in the end, the most important thing recovered was not the envelope inside it. It was the brothers' willingness, however fragile, to stop treating suspicion as truth. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.